Hey, I'm Oriana. Let me tell you a story. In the days after Jeff's death, it was really just about survival. It was get out of bed, put one foot in front of the other, get from sunrise to sunset. I didn't think of anything longer term than that until about the fourth day. And on the fourth day, it hit me. Can I pay my mortgage? Can I keep my kids in their activities? Can I pay for my car? It took me 4 days to have the mental clarity to realize that my household income had just decreased by more than half. And not to mention the fact that I had just started my mat leave, so I had a year ahead of me where I wasn't planning to be working. All these questions literally hit me all at once. I really felt dread set in and so much uncertainty. It's the scariest thing to wonder if you can care for your children. To be an adult on your own with 3 children and you don't even know if you can continue paying for your home for them. So that was a scary moment, and I think in that moment it was really important for me, and I'm really grateful that I was able to reach out to friends and family who were knowledgeable enough to give me some counsel on the topic and help me figure out what the next steps were. This episode is kind of more of a public service announcement. Losing a spouse, there's a lot of financial worry that comes into play, and there's a lot of administration that comes into play. And in those first days after Jeff died, I literally couldn't see straight out of my eyeballs, but I had no choice but to sit at my table and figure out who I needed to call and what papers I needed to fill out, because you have no choice. Me and my closest friends, we were literally sitting there like Googling, like checklist for when spouse dies. We didn't find many resources for that. And so I would like to provide some sort of checklist for people who have lost someone or the friends who are supporting someone who's lost someone. You know, if you've come across this in a Google search because someone's spouse just died, I hope that you can find a resource here that will help you do all the things and check all the things off the list. My sister-in-law and a good friend of mine came together and decided to create a GoFundMe campaign for me and the kids, which was surprising and wonderful. And, you know, even though I was a widow and I was terrified and depressed and grieving and in this unthinkable situation, for me, it was peace of mind that I'd be okay. It was peace of mind that at this moment, there was enough for me to keep my home, keep my car. Actually, at the moment Jeff died, I didn't even have a car that could fit all 3 kids. We were totally unprepared. We had a car coming, but we were waiting for it. So I couldn't even drive my 3 kids somewhere. And that GoFundMe campaign allowed me to buy my car straight out and to not have to worry about financing. Because how do you get financing, you know, as a single mom with no income? My friends and family who offered financial support without being asked, I'll never be able to thank them sufficiently, you know, because it's not just about the money. It's about what it meant to me emotionally to have some semblance of peace of mind in that moment where I had no peace of mind in any other way. And I'm very grateful that I didn't have to give up my home. One thing that I really wish Jeff and I would have done differently when he was alive was when we bought our first home. We bought this condo that I'm standing in. I remember sitting at the bank and they asked us, do you want mortgage insurance, like life insurance on your mortgage, so that if someone dies, your mortgage is paid off? And we just looked at each other. No, we're good. And I remember just kind of thinking like, we're not going to die. Like, no one's going to die. Like, who dies? It's so unlikely. And sure, it's unlikely, right? But it happens. I now am a single mom with a substantial mortgage. I just wish that we had taken that insurance, and we didn't take it because it was expensive and we felt like we couldn't afford the additional monthly expense. And I still feel like it's very expensive. Imagine if I could be mortgage free right now. That would have kind of changed the whole financial landscape for me. So get the insurance. One crazy thing is that since the moment our first child was born, we had said we should go get wills drawn up. And you know how, you know, parenthood and procrastination go hand in hand, and we didn't actually sign our wills until 2 weeks before he died. He signed his will and he was gone 2 weeks later. I'm very grateful that we got that done because it makes all of the paperwork and legal process much more clean cut if there's a will. And when you're a grieving widow, there's no capacity for any more obstacles to overcome. So if you are a parent and you don't have a will, go get a will. When your spouse dies, one of the first steps, if not the first step, is to choose a funeral home. The only reason I knew that to be true is because a friend of mine reached out. He had recently lost his brother, and he came to talk to me, and that was his advice. He said, pick a funeral home. The funeral home will deal directly with the hospital. That was news to me. I don't know how people are supposed to know these things. Make sure that the funeral home provides you with several copies of the death certificate, because you need that for a lot of administrative stuff, closing accounts and things like that. You have to inform your spouse's employer. You have to inform financial institutions, any bank accounts, except for joint ones. I didn't make any changes to joint bank accounts, but any financial institutions cancel credit cards. Contact their doctor and dentist, any other healthcare provider, because the last thing you want is like 3 months later, the dentist is calling to book your husband's cleaning. That happened to me. That was not a fun moment. You have to cancel their health card and their driver's license. You have to update your car insurance and your property insurance. Contact Service Canada to inform them of the death, and they cancel the SIN card, Canada pension benefits, and old age security. Then you can apply for the Canada Pension Plan death benefits as the spouse, and also there's a spousal support program, so there's government money that you're entitled to as a spouse. Cancel their cell phone, any loyalty points that they might have had through different memberships. You have to notify the CRA and file their final tax return. That's something that's a bit tricky and important, so make sure you have an accountant who is familiar with filing a final tax return, because from what I understand, it's a little bit more complex than a regular tax return. If you don't know a good accountant, just ask around. Your greatest resource is your circle of friends. I'm sure that if you ask a group of friends, somebody will be able to refer at least somebody who knows a good accountant. One notable thing that is kind of, I think, new for our generation, specifically when someone passes away, is social media. It sounds kind of stupid and trivial, but our social media footprint is bigger than ever, and it needs to be addressed. You don't really want to just leave everything as it is. So Facebook and Instagram offer something called memorializing their account. If you notify Facebook and Instagram about the death, they turn the page or the account into a memorialized account. People who visit it becomes clear that that person has passed, and it becomes more of like a memorial. People can still post on the wall and share stories, but you become the account manager. And another note as far as digital footprint goes, something that's so important but maybe not thought of as a priority is password management. Think about when somebody dies, how crazy it is to try and navigate every online account they have that has a password. Like if you're anything like me, I can barely manage my own passwords. When your spouse dies, something as simple as memorializing their Facebook page, you need to be able to log in to do that. If their Facebook password was some like bitching mystery and you can't crack it, then you're just out of luck on that one. That goes for like banking and even their phone. Like you need to be able to access passwords. My recommendation is for any couple, for both people to get independent password managers. So there's different apps that you can get. A paid one is probably a good idea, just because they tend to be better in security and quality. Invest in a password app where you can enter all your passwords and all your different login information, and then that itself will have a login, and you should know your partner's login. I mean, don't use it if you don't have to, but there should be some way to access your partner's online accounts in the case of an emergency. And the last thing on my list is, when you are calm and you have a clear mind, consider your mortgage situation if you own property. It's a little bit tricky because if you've just lost half your income and you are reporting this to your mortgage lender, you'll have to requalify as an individual. Depending on your financial situation, it could be likely that you won't qualify as an individual for the property you currently own. I think that's something that needs to be considered very carefully, and consult as many people as you can to get some solid advice before you tackle that one. I hope none of you ever have to use this list, but if you do, everything is written below so that you can scroll down, take a screenshot, send it to somebody you know who lost somebody, and maybe it will help. And that's my story. This episode was brought to you by Grief to Growth by Oriana.